It's another wonderful Sunday afternoon and welcome to It's Family Time, Let's Talk. It's a television series focusing on family matters and issues related to building healthy, functional families. My name is Ria Rupchansing and I will be your host for the duration of the series. And today we'll be discussing effective parenting, roles and responsibilities. And as always, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services made it their mandate to prioritize the care of children, youth and families by acknowledging the essential role they play in the development of the country. And as such, the ministry has said it will provide access to programs and services which support the well-being and care of all citizens. And for more information, these services can be found on the ministry's website, www.social.gov.tt. As mentioned, today's topic is effective parenting, and joining me to discuss this is Mr. Nigel Thompson, who is currently the Program Development Specialist attached to the Parenting Unit at the National Family Services Division within the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. He is responsible for the planning and execution of the Trinidad and Tobago National Parenting Program. Mr. Thompson has worked with many vulnerable and at-risk populations, including persons living with HIV/AIDS, the elderly, as well as the socially displaced. Also joining our panel is Dr. Sherilyn Boudram, who holds a PhD in social work and is currently serving as lecturer and coordinator of the social work program, UWI St. Augustine. She is actively involved in conducting workshops on parenting and co-parenting and conducting research on parenting challenges in today's world. Her professional experiences include working with marginalized youth, families and people who have experienced loss following disasters. Now, before we get to the discussions, viewers at home, remember you can send your questions via our TTT Live online Facebook page, and you can also give us a call at 622-4010. We take a short break. When we come back, we get straight into the discussion. Stay with us.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Welcome back to It's Family Time, Let's Talk, and today we are discussing effective parenting. And as we mentioned before, I do have with me Mr. Nigel Thompson, who is a Program Development Specialist of the Parenting Unit of the National Family Services Division, as well as Dr. Sherilyn Boudram, who's lecturer and coordinator of the Social Work Program. So welcome and thank you so much for being a part of today's discussion, effective parenting.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
It's such a
Wait,
pleasure.
Oh gosh, it's a topic we need to discuss, and I'm glad that we are in fact discussing
Yes.
this because we've been
Absolutely.
seeing so many different things on social media with issues, arising out of, maybe children who are, I don't want to say towing the line, but where parents probably need help in, having that effective communication and learning some parenting skills. So as we get into that, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Thompson.
Sure.
Effective parenting. There's no manual, parenting manual. We don't, how do we know we have children, and how do we know what to do? What would you say is effective parenting?
Thank you for that question. Well, first of all, effective parenting is really the ability where parents really engages and interact with the children on a positive note. In doing so, the child would be able to become a more well-rounded individual in society. People think that effective parenting is about perfect parenting. No, it's about being a good enough parent where your child will be able to really instill in them the norms and values that will help them to become a well-rounded individual in society.
Okay, now as you say that about, well-rounded individuals and things like that, sometimes there's a gray line, sometimes it's blurred. We're not exactly sure the roles and responsibilities of parents. So I'm going to give this one to Dr. Sharolan Boudram. Can you explain what it is we mean when we talk about roles and responsibilities of parents, and why are those roles and responsibilities important in a family?
Certainly. When we talk about roles of parenting, we're really looking at a person's position within a team. And I like to say within a team because sometimes we look at the family just as an institution, but really the family is a team, which means that if the family is a team, all members are contributing to some common vision or goals. And that, it also means that each person within that team really has a role to play in the success of that team, or each person has a role that they contribute to perhaps the challenges that the team will experience. When we talk about responsibilities, however, we are speaking about the tasks that individuals or people with position in that team need to fulfill. So those are their duties, their tasks. And it's important for us to understand roles and responsibilities in parenting because sometimes we confuse responsibility for roles. And then what we do is we focus on the individual task, but not necessarily place that within those larger roles that needs to be performed. And if we only focus on the tasks, we're not focusing on the vision for this family unit, and that then becomes a challenge. So that's why we have the conversation about roles and responsibilities.
So as you're talking about roles and responsibilities, we've got parents and we've got children. Define those roles for us that they've got, because sometimes, as I said, they may be blurred, and sometimes they may cross, because we were having some chats, before about the parent trying to be a friend to the child. So can you define that a little bit more for us?
Certainly, if you look at the family as a system or a team, with each person performing a particular role, we have subsystems. So we have the parenting group or the parenting system where there are parents involved in performing the role of nurturer and providing structure. But we also have children that contribute and perform the role in that children's subsystem. And when they both come together to create the family. And there are lots of energies between parents, and then between parent and child, and then between perhaps siblings. And the maintenance of the boundaries are important. So if we are to talk about what are the roles of parenting, we would understand that it's probably best to categorize those into two broad areas. One would be the nurture role, and the other would be the structure role. And when we talk about the nurture role, really what it means is that parents are required to give love, care, and sustenance to the children. So the role of nurturer or the nurturing role requires parents to take on the responsibilities of provision of food and shelter, seeing about the child's medical needs, but it's not just about the physical or physiological needs. You know, we have to delve deeper as nurturers, as parents, into understanding that children also have this need for love, affection, attention, trust, and a certain level of dependence into building their self-esteem. So that's the nurturer role. The second role that is important in family is the role of the structure role, which really speaks to parents fulfilling responsibilities around discipline. And that's a big word for us. What does discipline mean? But discipline, providing structure, understanding rules and responsibilities, and how you need to teach that to children so that they could understand their place in the family, within their school system, and within their communities. And there are some dangers, of course, you mentioned boundaries. There are some dangers when we provide too much of one at the cost of the other. And I think that's where we have those challenges with being ineffective parents. Because if we provide too much nurture and we give too much love and attention and affection and caring, that sounds perfect, right? Yeah. But what can happen is that the child may misinterpret this and may become very self-centered, or what we call egocentric, and so has this belief that the world revolves around them.
Yeah.
But there are also other problems, because when we provide too much nurture in that nurture role, then the child is not allowed to explore their independence. You know, the child becomes maybe overprotective. And, you know, sometimes we hear a lot about parents that hover around children and don't really necessarily give that child that space to grow and to develop their life skills. Again, when we look at boundaries, the alternative thing could happen. The flip side of it is when we provide too much structure, then the child becomes frustrated and stressed out. And the child has a problem trusting, and when we provide too much of that structure, the child doesn't learn how to develop their space within their environment. They sometimes become fearful, and that fear sometimes prohibits them from being autonomous or trying new things, because there is this belief that if I do something wrong, I'll be disciplined or punished for it. And so when we talk about effective parenting and boundaries, we need therefore to merge our understanding of the roles of nurturer and carer, to provide enough nurturing and structure so that the child is able to really develop and become the individual that he or she has the potential to be. But if we cross those boundaries, then what we do is provide other challenges to the children, because our children then become maybe too friendly, may engage in conversations or actions that are not age appropriate, and then other challenges emerge.
And Mr. Thompson, tell us, why is having that positive child relationship critical for a healthy development of the child?
Thank you for that question again. The reason why it is important is because children observe the behaviors of their parents. You know, they look at their parents as someone for guidance, someone for support. And when they are receiving that from their parents, they in turn, they would say, okay, you know, mommy is being caring towards me, daddy is being caring towards me. You know, so that in itself helps to develop the child in a positive way, because they realize, okay, if something is wrong with me, I can go to daddy, I can go to mommy. They would listen to me. They would understand what I am going through. All right.
Oh, I like that. And you see, that's where the communication comes in. And we're going to talk some more about that very shortly.
Sure, not a problem.
I just want to let you know that you can send your questions via our TTT Live online Facebook page, as well as call us at 622-4010. And we will be continuing the conversation very shortly. We take a short break. We'll be right back.
National Family Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services extends its support and commitment to individuals, families, and households. These support services include counseling and psychosocial support, workshops and webinars, and sensitization sessions under the parenting unit, support to grandparents raising their grandchildren under the grandparenting program. Support is offered anonymously and free of charge. For more information, please call the National Family Services Division at 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6711. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Talk, and I just want to remind you that you can send your questions via TTT Live Online. That's our Facebook page, as well as call us at 622-4010. And I want to ask this question to Dr. Charlene Boudram as well, because we find that, you know, the roles are changing. How have these roles changed, and how can they, what is now needed for today's world? Because the world itself is changing as well. So what is it? How do we cope? What do we do?
So I think that's a interesting question, because it's one that really takes into consideration all of the changes that is happening within society as well as within the family. And we are seeing that there are new family structures being created, or there are preponderance of more and more of particular types of family systems. I think one of the things we need to talk a little bit about in terms of the changing family and parenting roles in today's world is the parenting roles as it pertains to co-parenting, because we have seen in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean an increase in the number of co-parenting family structures. And by co-parenting, I mean it's a family structure where mother and father do not reside within the same space, the same house, and that could have been created because of a divorce or separation, or maybe they weren't married in the first place, so that the children did not live with both parents at the same time. And that has implications for how parenting is done, because it is assumed then that the person who is residing with the child now has all of the responsibilities of parenting. And so they have both the nurturer role and the responsibility of providing structure to the child, which includes discipline. And that becomes somewhat problematic, because the parent who is not in the home also needs to be part of the conversation and decisions made with respect to the child and the child's development. So that's one of the changing roles that we have seen, or changing family structure that we have seen.
And as you're talking about that as well, because you're talking about the father and the mother not in the same home, and one parent basically being, in a sense, responsible for that child as the child is living in that household. But I also want to find out about, as you talk about co-parenting, father, mother, separate households, the child is in one of them. But if the father has someone else in the life living in the house as well, and what the mother does, how does that work? Because this would be like a step parent or a step something. And sometimes the involvement is not always welcomed from either parent. How can we deal with that? What and how much should that step parent be involved in that child's life, if at all?
Yeah, and we hear about that often. If you listen to the radio stations and you listen to conversations as you travel in a maxi or you go to the hairdresser, you hear more and more about the conflict between co-parents and their partners, and in some cases blended or reconstituted families. There is certainly a need for a discussion. And I'm saying discussion because sometimes a lot of tension.
That's exactly so, because, you know, sometimes you'd find, I don't want this person telling my child anything. But you
Yes.
have to think about the well-being of the child.
And that's exactly where we need to go. You see, you as a member, a partner, a former partner may have some conflict with your ex. Similarly, you may have some feelings towards this new person entering into your child and your family system. But at the end of the day, the conversation is important because it impacts on the welfare of the child and the happiness of the child. So again, it comes back to us all being a team. And we need to work together because we have a vision for this child to be happy and healthy and to live a productive, meaningful life. And for us to make sure that that happens as adults, and you know, that's an important word there. As adults, we need to come together to have this conversation. And sometimes where you are at, it may not be an easy conversation. So I like to suggest to persons that you bring in an external party into the conversation. Now, I'm not saying grandmother or aunt or someone, but someone that both groups respect and who can give maybe a biased opinion and guidance and have that kind of conversation. And beyond the emotions of dislike, and this person is not supposed to, and I am not supposed to, you could have the conversation around what should we do, what can we do, and how can it be monitored. So you're looking at actual tasks and kind of leaving the emotion out of it.
That is easier said than done, as you well know, in situations like that, because there's so much tension, especially if it's in a strained relationship, so much tension between the parents. And it's always, in a sense, difficult for those parents to say, my child comes first. It doesn't matter what's going on between mother and father, my child comes first. And that is what parents have to keep at the back of their heads and continually saying to themselves. We do have a question via our Facebook page, though. Children may sometimes become scared to speak to a parent about issues. Yes, that happens a lot of the time. What qualities can a parent possess to be more approachable? I think that's a good one for you, Mr. Thompson.
Okay, well, first of all, with regards to the question, thank you. I believe that the parent's supposed to be able to take a more child-centered approach, you know, being able to really, if you want to, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
That child might be afraid to come to the parent to talk about an issue that they may have. What do they do? What is a good parent approach to address that with the child?
Okay. So with regards to that, I believe that the parent's supposed to be able to take, again, a child-centered approach. You know, you don't want the child to feel very fearful, you know. You want to be able to be approachable so the child can really come to you to really explain what is going on with them, right? So I believe a child-centered approach is necessary with regards to that.
And that would require what sort of quality in a parent, Dr. Budram?
Well, I would like to think that it's not about a child communicating with everything to you now. It's a process. And that process requires the parent to open that line of communication. You know, having dinner together or having a meal together where the parent starts saying, how was your day today? What did you do in school? Or who are the children you played with? Or who did you talk to? And what happened in class? That opens a line of communication and it builds trust between the child and the parent. You take the child to a playground and on the drive across or the walk across, you know, you start asking them, so what do you like? What you don't like? What problems you're having in school? What problems you're having with this one? And, you know, if it's older teenagers and they're getting involved in relationships, well, tell me about any girl talk to you, any boy talk to you. It's really about the parent taking that first step. And it comes back to the discipline. Sometimes if we over-discipline a child and we focus too much on the right and the wrong and so on, the child only sees you as a disciplinarian. And so sometimes you now have to say, yeah, what? I'm going to spend more nurturing time.
That's it. And also wanting to please mommy or daddy.
Yes.
And that's what they want to do as well. And I was thinking about when you talked about teenagers, you know, sometimes it's difficult to have these conversations with teenagers because it's like, what you want to find out my life? But if you start from young, you know, you start from young and build that trust with your child. When they get to that teenage stage, it's easier for them to come to you and talk to you.
But it's never too late.
It's not.
And I don't express shock when your child tells you something. They're testing you out
They
to
do.
see whether, they'll tell you something shocking about John and who they met in school
Yeah.
or whatever. But they're testing you out. Don't express shock.
Yeah.
You approach them in a kind of way that they understand that you are understanding situations, so that when their time comes, they would be able to share something with you. And when they do that, don't express shock either. And don't go to your natural, normal instinct of perhaps saying, what? Have a softer approach. Breathe.
And I mean, you really have to think about these things when it's like you have to internalize these
Yes.
things before anything else.
And it's practice.
It does.
It is.
We've got another question. What if some parents aren't equipped to be good caregivers? What happens?
So this is where the parenting unit actually comes into play, because
Lovely.
we have a lot of parenting workshops. We have our general parenting workshops, which provides parents with effective parenting skills as well as parenting knowledge. So for parents who may not know how to properly, effectively parent their children, we have workshops that are geared towards that, which covers a lot of areas, such as co-parenting, guidelines to effective parenting, discipline versus punishment, just to name a few. Okay.
Okay, let's go to Dr. Budram again, because it's good to know that, the Parenting National Family Services has that parenting division, and people can access it. And they can, if they have issues and things like that, they can actually
Yes.
access it and get help. Because like I said, there's no handbook, there's no manual of how to be a good parent, how to be a parent on a whole. So it's good that, there are places where, advice can be given to be a more effective parent. As I come now to ask Dr. Budram, are there any sort of unique situations where parents' roles and situations, responsibilities can be challenged, those unique roles and situations?
Absolutely. I think that we are seeing more changes to society and societal pressures on the family, and families are not being as responsive as they may need to be. So some of the changes or challenges that you may encounter are parents who need to provide that role to children with disability, and then therefore need to be more nurturing to ensure that the child feels a sense of purpose, and you build the child's self-esteem. Also seeing other situations where siblings of children with disability also need to be given some attention, because it's so easy for parents to be drawn in to the responsibility of taking care of a child living with a disability,
neglect the
that
others.
the other siblings are sometimes neglected, or may feel that way. It may not necessarily be that way, but they feel as if they lack some attention, and so that can also be a challenge. However, I think that parents' roles will change, and it's important for us to know that it changes based on the different developmental needs of the child, which is really tied to the age of the child. So what you provide to a child between 1 and 4 may not be the same role that you provide when the child is 14, 15, or 16. And I see a lot of parents having a problem with that, because they're still parenting a 13-year-old the way they parent a 6-year-old. God bless their souls. And it's wonderful. But what we do is we challenge the young person's ability to negotiate that stage of development and to really build to enter into another one. So if you parent a 13 and 14-year-old the way you parented them when they were 5 and 6, you're taking away from their independence and their ability to negotiate their space.
So as you say that then, because it is a totally different age, and we know what happens when children hit teenage years, we've all been there and we're seeing it happening. What advice would you give to parents parenting, especially a teenager?
This is something that we have not spoken about. You don't hear it in conversations. I think Nigel alluded to it when he talked about child-centered approaches. It's okay to ask the child, is there something that you need? How are we doing as a parent? I think that's the best evaluator of your parenting practice. And I do know someone who had put up on a family chat, a group chat rather. I asked my son ever so often, I asked him, am I doing a good job as a parent? And that's a good way of finding out, what do I need to do differently? And the child will, if you create that open space, that open environment, the child will probably give you some direction.
And a good thing about that too is when the child answers, if it's not the answer you want to hear, don't overreact. Take it with a grain of salt or however much
Yes.
salt you need to take. Listen
Yes.
and try to adjust. We have a caller from Arima. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your question
Hi,
this
very good
afternoon?
topic. I have a question for the panel. I'm a mother of three, and I have one who's really, really out of hand. Doesn't listen, gives a lot of trouble in school. What are some of the options I can do with respect to that, because it may lead to expulsion?
What are their
She's
ages?
really. Repeat what you said.
What are their ages?
The eldest is 16, 10, and 3.
Okay.
And
That's
the eldest
nice.
is the one that is testing my patience.
The 16-year-old?
The 16-year-old, yes.
Teenager.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so thank you
I'm
very much for
trying
that question.
to find out what avenues are further to me before it reaches expulsion at the school. What can I do? Because I'm a single mother.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Thank you for your question. Mr. Thompson's going to
Yes,
answer that
thank
for
you again for your question. Well, with regards to the parenting unit under the National Family Services Division, one of the key components that we look at is parenting support, which is providing psychosocial interventions for parents who may be going through a tough time with parenting their children. So what the caller can probably do is they can call the they can call the ministry, which is 623-2608. The National Family Services Division is extension 6701 to 6714, where we would take the information, and the information would then be given to one of our experienced social workers who would be able to assist further with regards to that.
Yes, and I want to let parents know, because I know that there will be parents out there who are having issues similar to their Rima parent, and she's fighting now to keep her child out from being expelled, and there are services available at the National Family Services Division. And you can give them a call, set up an appointment, or you can just walk in as well.
Yes, we provide walk-ins as
Yeah.
well. They can just come in and we will take the information and they would be referred to a social worker.
Yeah, so if you know that you're having that problem, please get in touch with them, and they can help. And it's a free service. Yeah, so you don't have to bother about paying anything. It's a free service, so please access it, okay? Okay, so we're still talking about parents, and how, Dr. Budram, would you say parents can maintain, because we touched on a little bit, those boundaries that come up every so often. How can they maintain those boundaries, and why is maintaining those boundaries important?
Certainly. So it's important. I'll start with the last part of the question first. It's important for us as parents, or for parents, to maintain boundaries, because that maintaining boundaries allow the child the space to develop in his or her appropriate developmental age. And if we cross some of those boundaries, what would happen is we would kind of provide the child with opportunities to maybe be more adult than they ought to at that particular age, or we may have the child remain in a developmental stage that that they've passed, and so boundaries are important and healthy to maintain, but it's also important to be able to maintain these boundaries, because it allows the child to know what are the rules and regulations of society that need to be maintained and need to be followed. So boundaries would demonstrate to the child what is permitted and what is not permitted. And so that child learns at a very early age, and as they continue, they understand that there are particular responsibilities that they have or not have. Sometimes parents allow children to be parents, and they allow the child to cross that boundary of being a child. When that happens, the child is not able to live a healthy, happy life as a child, and so therefore not negotiate those particular tasks that they need to do at that age. We know that sometimes parents have conversations with children that may be inappropriate. And then what had happened, that child takes it into the other spheres of their life, engaging with other adults and their colleagues or their peers in ways that may be too adult for them. Maintaining boundaries is also about having healthy respect for one another. So parents there are some parents that tend to triangulate, so they build an alliance with the child that is unhealthy against another parent.
Yes.
That is not a good thing at all, because the child ends up resenting the other parent, or aligning himself or herself to the parent one parent in an unhealthy way, where they become a friend. You know, and there's nothing wrong with being friendly towards your child, but there is a boundary to not being your child's friend, right?
I'm glad that you said that. And I have another question based on that. When the child actually assumes, in a sense, the role of the parent, because there's one missing, so they assume that role. But before we get to that, we do have a Facebook question again. What is the difference between male and female parenting? Because there is a difference, you said. So what would you say is the difference between male and female parenting?
Well, if we go back to discussing roles, right? We in a society have grown accustomed to having the belief that the mother plays the role of the nurturer. And the father plays the role of the providing structure, or, like you say, discipline. Right? And so, the question about the difference in roles is really something that society has done maybe to streamline. What I want to advocate for is for a little erasure of those lines, because what happens is when the father becomes the main person who is disciplining, the relationship between the child and the father is one that is somewhat has a gap. You know, sometimes have a little rift. And so sometimes fathers tell me, I don't know if my child loves me because all they see me doing is saying, this is the rule, this is what you need to follow. Yeah. On the flip side, we have mothers that don't like to get involved in the discipline, and they become over-nurturers. And then there are mothers that complain, well, this child is always on me and clingy, and I want the child to live independently. But if we have an erasure of some of those lines, and there's an equal discussion about discipline and structure and nurturing, and fathers become more involved in giving affection, then the child also grows up to be a good person that is trusting and that is able to maintain some of the boundaries in society. And then when that child becomes a parent, that child is also going to be able to use some of those positive parenting skills on their children. You know, we say that we learn to parent from our parents.
Yes. And as you say that, I want to say too that, I see the younger men nowadays wanting to be a part of their child's lives. And I have to say to the women, let them be that part of the child's life. Because the older generation, they're different. The younger generation wants that relationship. Don't try to put one parent against the next.
That's right.
And don't use the child as some device to get back at mother, father. Don't do that. We've got another question. Remember, you can also post your questions to TT Live online. That's our Facebook page. You can also give us a call at 622-4010. Here's one for a 2-year-old. If you have a 2-year-old, how do you know if you're nourishing them properly? You would think that that's but how do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you're a new parent.
That's it. How do you know?
With grandparents or other persons who have had the experience. I have to say that nourishing is not just a physical thing. So let's talk about the physical thing first. If you have a 2-year-old and you are kind of worried or concerned about whether the child is getting proper nutrition physiologically, I would suggest that you talk to your pediatrician, or you go to a health center and you do the checkup. You go to clinic, and the nurses there are wonderful and will be able to provide you with sufficient information. If there is a concern, they would allow you or they would network with a dietitian or a nutritionist that would be able to further help you according to the need of the child. So it's a nice question. We don't know exactly what's the need of the child, but when you go to a medical practitioner or you go to your clinic, they would be able to determine whether the child is being nourished and also give you some tips as to how to provide better nutrition. But nourishing is also about a social, psychosocial kind of emotional development. And nourishing a child is about making sure the child smiles, giving the child experiences that allow the child to grow and to explore. And I'm happy that this question has come up, because over the last 2 weeks, I have had several parents talk to me about their child, who is actually 2 and 3 years old, never going to a beach because of COVID.
Oh dear.
And we didn't look at the unintended
Yes.
impact of COVID on young children. And I think that's something we need to pay attention to. So that nourishing is also about giving them experiences that will help them to explore their world. And on several of those conversations I've had, the child has demonstrated behavioral and developmental challenges, not being able to speak at 2.5 and 3. So, you know, we are seeing some instances where additional work needs to be done, you know, going out in the yard, in a playground and playing. It's
Couldn't
also
do
about
that,
nourishing
yes.
that soul and that spirit of the child.
And remember too, children, they need to socialize.
Absolutely.
And COVID did take a big dent out of that, but children need to socialize. So try to get them to do that as best as you can. This conversation is going to continue. Oh my goodness. Don't forget, you can send your questions to TTD Live online or Facebook page. And you can also give us a call at 622-4010. We'll be right back.
The National Family Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services extends its support and commitment to individuals, families, and households. These support services include counseling and psychosocial support, workshops and webinars, and sensitization sessions under the parenting unit, support to grandparents raising their grandchildren under the grandparenting program. Support is offered anonymously and free of charge. For more information, please call the National Family Services Division at 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6711. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Welcome back to It's Family Time. Let's talk. And we are here with Nigel Thompson, the Program Development Specialist, and Dr. Sharolan Boudram, Lecturer at the UWI. Remember, you can send us your questions at TTD Live online or Facebook page. You can also give us a call at 622-4010. We are live, so you can do that right about now. And we were talking boundaries. And one of the questions that I did actually want to get back into, because I've heard a psychologist that, you know, I speak to quite often, you know, he often talks about where children assume or are given the role of the parent. And these are young children. I'm not even talking teenage yet. Sometimes they're even younger than that. Because there's an absent parent, that child assumes or is given the role of that other parent and basically carries out the duties of that other parent. How do we balance that? How do we deal with a child in a situation like that? And why should that not be the case?
Okay.
Hold on to that question, because I think that answer, I think we do have a caller from Maloney. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to It's Family Time. Let's talk.
Good afternoon. What I would like to know, how would you discipline a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old who is not listening to their father?
That's a good one. Thank you so much for your call. How would you discipline a 14 and an 11-year-old who's not listening to their father? Again, she says father, not necessarily both parents, but how would you do that? Who wants to take that one?
I can try.
There you go.
Okay, with regards to that question, you know, both of them are in different age categories, you know. So with regards to disciplining the 11-year-old, right, it will be different from disciplining a 14-year-old because he's a teenager and that child is still a preteen. So it will be different for both child, right? Dr. Boudram, you want to expand on that?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what is the family structure, and I think that would have a lot to do with the response the children are making towards their father. So whatever I'm giving is just going to be a general statement in that discipline is about teaching children to behave in a particular way. And sometimes we need to take the discipline, we need to emphasize the nurturer role before we reach the discipline role. And I think it's about a conversation as to what is going on in their mind. Not asking why, because they'll be defensive. What is going on in their mind in trying to ascertain why it is that they are not communicating or listening to their father. And there may be many reasons for that. And it comes back down to understanding that family structure there. And do they have the opportunity to listen? Are they away from the father? Is the father living within the family situation? But okay, so when it comes to discipline, we discipline in order for children to behave or to act according to what is proper, what we deem as correct or acceptable. At 11 and 14, I'm not an advocate by any means of any form of physical kind of discipline. What I would suggest is withholding rights and privileges from the children. I also would suggest that there is a bigger conversation around the need to support rules and regulations and decisions that are made by both parents. And I also think if both parents are in a way of a position to communicate, that they communicate and share discipline. They share instructions so that the child knows that this is not just an instruction for my father, but it is also the family that is supporting that I need to do this. And by doing that, it of course takes away some of the responsibility in terms of discipline based only on the father to be shared, but it also reinforces that the family has a goal that we want to work towards, and you doing this and listening, as the caller said, listening to your father is part of all of us moving towards that particular goal.
As you talk about discipline, and you didn't want to exactly say it, but you're talking about licks, sharing licks as a form of discipline, which is not always the best way to go. And you did give an idea of some form of discipline. But I think what parents also want to know is, do you have any other ways? Because you said, holding back certain things. What other types of discipline can a parent give to a child to ensure that, this is what we are supposed to do. This is the way that we're supposed to go. We do have a caller from Tobago, though. So hello and good afternoon to you, Tobago.
Hi, good afternoon. So lovely to be in the program. I'd just like to know one thing. How would you teach a child to put Almighty God first in everything and teach a child everything about human rights and how to take care of themselves and others and everything?
Okay, how do you do that? It starts from the family.
Well, it starts from the family. I think Nigel said it best when he said children mimic their parents. And so if we want to have children develop spiritually, it's also that we have to demonstrate those behaviors that we would like our child to replicate. And in demonstrating those behaviors, when the child sees it and they copy it or they replicate it, then whatever they read, whatever they say, or whichever way they praise whoever they think is their maker and so on, becomes ingrained in the child. But I also want to say that sometimes we think that the child is not learning to develop spiritually because they're not given the opportunity to demonstrate that. But when they are in their own circles, they do demonstrate a connection to God and to understanding that there is this universal being and so on. So we also need to know that it's not supposed to be so strict. We're not supposed to push spirituality so strict that the child resents it. I've worked with children who said, oh gosh, every Sunday we had to go to church or to the mosque or to temple, and we had to go there and we had to do this, and I just resent it. And so we have to balance to make sure our child is happy and being engaged in the actions. We demonstrate it, but we also know that spirituality is a personal journey. So developing a sense of responsibility and civic mindedness in children, that desire to give back, that desire to help persons is also important in developing that child as a person in society and someone who is understanding that the world doesn't revolve around me, but there are others, and part of my responsibility is to also care and to nurture others.
And as you say that, that actually makes me think that there needs to be some parent or family training as well involved in that, because I think parents need to know that as well, that this is what we need to do. If we want a better child, this is what we need to do. And we are going to talk about that, what the Family Services Division offers very shortly. Mr. Thompson is going to tell us about that, but we do have to take a short break. We will be coming back with that right after this break, so stay with us.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Welcome back. It's Family Time Let's Talk, and I am talking with Mr. Nigel Thompson, Program Development Specialist, and Dr. Sherilyn Boodram, Lecturer at the UWI right here in St. Augustine. And don't forget, you can still send us your questions at TTT Live online, or you can give us a call at 622-4010. Effective parenting is what we're talking about this afternoon, and it's a very, very, very important topic. We're seeing it all the time these days on Facebook with what's going on in the schools and parents and having to try to deal with it. They're not clear what they need to do. They're struggling, and we need to have this discussion. As I say that, though, there are a few programs and workshops and various things that are going on with the National Family Services Division. Can you tell us about those, Mr.
Sure,
Thompson?
not a problem. Well, first of all, our parenting unit, as mentioned, is responsible for implementing the national parenting programs across Trinidad and Tobago. The parenting unit is guided by 3 components. Parenting education, which focuses on sensitization. We also have outreaches that we will go to across the country where we would inform the public about parenting, the services that are offered by the National Family Services as well. We also have parenting training, which focus on the workshops. So, for example, we would have co-parenting workshops, which is to really help parents who may be separated or may have been divorced to help parent their children. We also have general parenting, which focuses on, giving persons an understanding of how to properly, effectively parent their child. We also have parenting for grandparents, because we know now that a lot of grandparents have tasked with the responsibility of parenting their grandchildren in the absence that the mother or the father is not at home. So we have that workshop as well. We also have parenting for men, which focuses on really providing that safe space for men to speak up about the challenges that they may face in with regards to parenting. So that workshop is geared towards them. We also have parenting support. Parenting support is where we provide psychosocial interventions for parents who may be going through some form of depression. And they can call, it's free, they would normally be referred to one of our experienced national family social workers who would be able to assist them in the form of counseling. They can also call the ministry. The ministry has a toll-free number, 800-1673. We will take the information, and that information would be given towards one of our social workers as well. Right?
And we often talk about, parents, and it's more focused on the mother, and we tend to forget the father, and
Yes.
that they may be going through a lot of issues as well, and they have a lot of questions. They need a lot of help. People who have been laid off possibly from COVID and various other things, and it's a really psychosocial, as you said, issue that we have going on. But there are different parenting styles as well, and I'll get back to that because we do have another question, because I want to talk about parenting styles and the impact as well on the children. But we've got this Facebook question. So how do you as a parent, that is, deal with the news of a child wanting to be a part of the LGBTQ community? That's the whole thing now, LGBTQ plus, that's what it is. So how does a parent deal with that? Because that is a real situation these days, and you're seeing it more and more because they're more open now, coming out with these things. So how? And he's passing it on to you, Dr. Boodram.
I think it's all about communication. I have to say that there are a number of children that are going through a lot of conflict because they're trying to negotiate their sexual identity, and they're also trying to live up to the expectations of their parents. There are also parents that are expectations of parents of being
and their peers as well, huh?
Yes, and of
So
course
it's a
their
balance,
peers. And I think it's important for us to understand there is a need for conversation. I've had a number of young people that talk about the depths of depression, suicidal ideation. And, you know, I tend to tell parents, if something was to happen to your child, let's say that they harm themselves, what would you do knowing that one of the reasons is because you were not accepting at all of their gender identity or their sexual orientation, and that you may have led your child to harm themselves in such a way that you don't see your child anymore? And for all of the parents that have asked those questions, they said that, you know what, I'd much prefer to have my child than to lose my child for this. And it allows that conversation then to take place. You know, the child will become an adult and make their decisions anyway, with or without your permission or your approval. But that child will always be your child. And it's important to remember that when you have that conversation.
We've just got a few more minutes, but I do want to just get a brief idea of the parenting styles.
Yes.
If I can.
Yes, sure, not a problem. Well, there are 4 types of parenting styles. There's the authoritarian. This is where the parent tends to be very strict, right? There is no type of negotiation. It's what I say goes, right? We also have the authoritative parenting, which is more supportive, which is more engaging with parents. We also have the permissive parents. They tend to be laid back, but they tend to not enforce any type of rules, right? They tend to tell their child, you know, when they grow up, you know, they have to be able to function in society because society also has rules. So they can be free-spirited children, you know. I'm not going to enforce any type of rules on them. They are children, they can do as they please, right? We also have the neglectful type of parenting style, which is where the parent tends to be unresponsive. You know, there is no engagement, you know, so those are the different types of parenting styles.
And you need to figure out where you are.
Yes, exactly.
Dr. Budram, your final words.
I think I just want to end by appreciating all of the work of parents. Sometimes parents don't hear that you're doing a good job. And, you know, if I can communicate that to you, you are doing a good job. You're making choices based on your situation, and you are there to support your children. And continue to do that by monitoring and evaluating your own self and how you give nurture and structure or discipline.
And Mr. Thompson, your final words.
Sure, not a problem. Well, for parents out there who may be struggling, you know, you can always call the National Family Services Division. Our number 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6714. If you are struggling again, you can always reach out to us, and we will be able to intervene further with regards to helping you in any form of way. All right, thank you.
I want to thank you both very much. Dr. Sherilyn Budram, lecturer and coordinator at the Social Welfare Social Work Program, as well as Mr. Nigel Thompson, who is a Program Development Specialist of the Parenting Unit of the National Family Services Division, as we were discussing this afternoon, effective parenting, roles and responsibilities. Thank you so very much. Remember, you can get help from the Family Services Division, totally free. If you need any help, if you have any parenting questions, if you have any parenting issues as well, so please do access that service. That's it for It's Family Time. Let's Talk this afternoon. We'll be right back here next week, same time at 3 o'clock on TTT. Thank you for joining us. From all of us here, do have a great afternoon.
This is TTT. Live for local.